Hi there, my name is Renee Hobbs, and today I am talking with Howard Rheingold, who is really a distinguished leader in the area of social media literacy. He is a Web 2.0 guru extraordinaire, and he's reached literally millions of people with his incredible book, Net Smart: How to Thrive Online. Howard, we are so delighted that you're coming to the Summer Institute in Digital Literacy, and thanks so much for the opportunity to talk with you a little bit about your talk, which has something to do with different varieties of digital literacy. Can you tell us more?
Well, first of all, I have to say, when I started researching my book, Net Smart, your name was at the top of every search for media literacy. So you've been at this for a while. I have been at it as a practitioner for a long time, and writing about technology, I have been asked by critics, by scholars, which I certainly did not aspire to be a scholar. I was just a writer trying to make a living, and an aficionado of online communication, and by myself, the question, is this stuff really any good for us? In the 1980s, this stuff meant personal computers. In the 1990s, it was the beginnings of what we now call social media. And now, of course, social media have taken over so much of the world, and it's gone mobile. And I've thought about that a lot, and my answer was, and this is an optimist's answer, it depends on what we know. And we, meaning everybody who uses social media. What is the percentage of people using social media who have some clues about how to use it? There's not much we can do about the big issues like infrastructure and digital divide, but I believe there's a lot that we can do about educating people about using social media in ways that benefit them as individuals, but benefit all of us by creating a healthier commons. Because after all, I think it's not certain that the future of the web is going to continue to be this wonderful resource. There's an awful lot of bad information, unhealthy information, nasty communication going on. What can we do about it? So I thought about it, I researched it, and I realized that when writing a book, of course, you have to narrow your scope somewhat. And so I came up with what I thought were the 5 essential skills or literacies or fluencies. Some people argue about which word to use, that if people know them, they will do better as individuals. And if they don't know them, they won't do so well as individuals. And if more people know them, then we can enrich the online commons for all of us. So I start with attention, because attention is really the basis of thought and communication. And it's clear to everybody in the world that people are walking down the street looking at their phones. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Well, it's kind of annoying, and it is dangerous. And I understand that driving while texting has now surpassed driving while drinking as a cause of fatality. So clearly, there's something we need to do about distraction. The makers of the devices are not going to change them, but we can learn to control our attention. And I believe that it isn't helpful to try to put the blame on the media. The blame is on, we don't know how to use the media, and it's not as if attention cannot be trained. So I start with that, and in my 10 years of teaching college students, I dealt with that with them in the classroom. All teachers know about laptops in the classroom and attention, and the students are concerned about it as well. And the second, I felt, in terms of priorities, what's important was what I call crap detection. I took that term from Ernest Hemingway, who said that every good journalist needs to have an internal crap detector. We live in an age where you can ask any question at any time, anywhere, and get thousands of answers within a second. I remember before that was true. I think it's miraculous. I use search engines 100 times a day. However, and I realized this when my daughter was growing up, she came of age at the same time as the search engine. It's now up to the person who's doing the search to try to determine whether the answers, the thousands of answers they get to their questions, are good information or bad information or misinformation or disinformation. It's becoming more and more sophisticated and confusing. We do have tools, and I've compiled a lot of the tools at bit.ly/crapdetect, one word, to help people try to answer questions. And if you're asking questions about some of the political rumors that are going around, your liberty may be at stake. If you're asking medical questions, which so many people do, your life may be at stake. This is serious business. It's not just where's the nearest place to get a pizza, which is among the questions you might ask. So I did a chapter on that, and I think that that's an essential literacy. So what's next? I think that participation is very important. We have Facebook these days and Twitter and Instagram that channel our participation inside their templates. So many people think that Facebook is the web. Facebook's great. I use it. It's not the web. If it is to become the web, we're going to lose a great resource in which individuals create great new ways to use knowledge and entertain and communicate. That's why we're talking about this. The web was not created by corporations. It wasn't created by governments. It was created by millions of people who took advantage of what Tim Berners-Lee gave to the world. He didn't try to own it, and put up web pages with links to each other. And a lot of those web pages were, here's my dog, and here's some links to other people's dogs. But pretty soon the world's knowledge came aboard. Google and Facebook were invented by college students in their dorm rooms. I would like to see my daughter and her descendants continue to have that power to invent new cultural tools for people and not have it wholly owned by one of the 5 big corporations, Amazon, Apple, Google, Microsoft, Yahoo. I use all of their products and I like them very much, but I don't want them to own the commons. And I think the way to do that is to encourage more people to participate, to blog, to wiki, to learn how to create their own web pages, to learn how to code, to put up YouTube videos. If you want to learn how to do something, if you ask a 14-year-old, they'll say, well, if I want to learn how to play a ukulele or configure a web server, I'll search on YouTube. We have a really wonderful bubbling commons full of contributions from people. I would like to see that expand and not contract. So I have a chapter on participation. What's next? Collaboration. Again, I think that we're talking about this because the internet and then the web enabled people to communicate and to do things together. What sociologists would call collective action in ways that we weren't able to do before. And some of that is not so healthy. Terrorists, criminals, their ability to collaborate is enhanced. But also, we're doing this right now. If you are a barefoot genius somewhere where there's not a brick and mortar school, but you've got a smartphone, hey, you have access to great lectures online. People are able to organize demonstrations and bring down dictators. People are able to create Wikipedia for free, open source software, the web itself. We live in an online world that was created through collaboration. There are so many kinds of collaboration. I wrote books about virtual communities and smart mobs, but we also have social production. We've got crowdsourcing. We've got collective intelligence. There's so many different genres of collaboration. I think it could be you could have a department in a university on online collaboration. I taught at a communication department. I was the only person in that department who was explicitly teaching courses about the web. I think we need to see more of that, but also you don't have to go to college to learn how to collaborate and to access it. And for the most part, if you can afford to get online, it's free. The tools are free. How do you use them? Again, know-how is the critical uncertainty. And finally, network awareness. We live not just in an information era, but in a network world. Manuel Castells wrote a 5-volume book about the network society. Our institutions and our ways of life are embedded in networks. Humans have had social networks long before Facebook came along. In fact, anthropologist Robin Dunbar and others have written about our social networking capabilities being part of why humans became the dominant species. The technology we're using now, online communication media, amplify our natural human social networks in ways that were never before possible. So you and I can communicate. We can communicate with people on the other side of the world that we didn't know, but who share an interest. Social capital, the capacity for people to do things for each other outside of formal institutions like laws and contracts, depend on networks of trust and norms of reciprocity. Social network analysis is a powerful tool that social scientists and law enforcement and people who are knowledgeable can use to explore where they stand. You know, it's not just how many friends you have, it's how many people have to go through you to get to other people. If you can connect networks that are otherwise not connected, you stand to benefit from that. So a little knowledge about what sociologists and economists and network scientists know about networks, it's not really rocket science. It just has not been compiled for ordinary people to grasp, and you grasp it because we live in it every day. So those are the 5 literacies: attention, crop detection, participation, collaboration, and network awareness. So that's a long answer to your short question.
That's a great answer to our question, because the Summer Institute in Digital Literacy is really aiming to address all of those issues, and those are absolutely what our librarians and our K-12 teachers and the college professors and the media professionals who attend are there to sort of more deeply reflect on, and especially to think about the implications of those ideas for our practice. But Howard, I have to ask you the second question. In addition to being a phenomenal journalist and writer and really just sparkling prose that just sings off the page, you're also, it turns out, a pretty darn good teacher. And you've not only been teaching in face-to-face situations, but you've been teaching on the open internet. Can you give us some insights about what you're learning about learning online?
Well, you know, I started using the term co-learning. I've learned so much from others. I had no formal training. And part of having no formal training was, once I got over my fear of allowing my students to know how much I did not know, I think it's important for teachers to get over that fear. Once your students know that you're learning as well, I think that's very important. I began to ask them, what's going on? I'm trying experiments here, and I want to know what works and what doesn't work. Once I was able to enter into a dialogue with the students, I began to evolve my teaching in ways that I would not have thought of. I started, when I email my students, I always greet them with esteemed students. I started teaching purely online at what I started kind of whimsically calling Rheingold U a few years ago. And for some reason, when I started my first email to my learners, I said, esteemed co-learners. And they took to that so powerfully that I realized, well, we've all been schooled and being taught. And my students at somewhat elite universities were experts at being taught. They were very well attuned to what the teacher was saying. They took good notes. They knew what was going to be on the test. They would answer questions. Cooperatively learning together was not something that they had much exercise in. But when I forced them to do it, they did it with relish. When I asked them to co-teach with me, they were a little taken aback, but then once they did it, once they stood up and did it, they became enthusiastic about trying to outdo each other, to find engaging ways to address the material. I learned something I didn't invent. I didn't invent any of this stuff, but a curious mind discovers things. If you take the chairs and you turn them into a circle, magical things can happen. There is no back row in a circle, and you're all looking at each other. I discovered there's something called open space technology. That's a meeting method that uses the circle as well. So this is a long subject. I've written a great deal and have done a lot of interviews at dmlcentral.net and connectedlearning.tv about many educators who are using these methods. But to me, I'm not giving up my position of expertise, but I'm shifting it somewhat to being the expert at facilitating co-learning. I am the subject matter expert in the subject that I'm teaching, and I do have this urge to deliver the knowledge that I think they ought to have. But, and others might dispute this, I think that if the students struggle to make sense of it and learn 1/10 of what I could deliver on their own, it's going to mean 10 times as much as me giving it to them.
Yeah.
So, it's radical in terms of the way our schools work, but it's not radical in the way that humans learn. We are human because we are the only primate who are experts at social learning. Our ancestors of Homo sapiens, they made a very sophisticated kind of hand axe that required 50 ways of chipping a rock for 1,000,000 years without it changing. At some point, we learned to communicate with each other about, look, here's a better way to do things. Look, I can make fire. Look, we can cook food. Once you discover something and you teach others and they can teach others, then human culture really rocketed. Our ability to learn together is so important. And certainly if you're going to be a surgeon, you got to learn the nerves of the face. I'm not demeaning the necessity of delivering bodies of knowledge, but that's only part of it. I believe facilitating the skills of learning together, and nowadays learning together using these marvelous digital media that we have, is as important or more important, because in so many ways, the nerves of the face aren't going to change, but so much of what you're learning in school today is not what you're going to be doing when you graduate. I wanted to be a writer, and I thought I would spend my life with a typewriter. I didn't know I would be making videos and facilitating online communities and creating wikis and blogs and tweeting. I've learned that my desire to be a writer was about learning what's going on, trying to understand it, and trying to communicate that. Why restrict it to typing? I think today's students need to understand they need to know how to learn, because unfortunately, maybe the world is changing so fast that what they're going to face when they graduate is not what they face when they start school.
Right. And how exciting it is to be realize that you're not just receiving knowledge, but you are constructing new knowledge. That is the thrill of intellectual curiosity at its very core. Howard, we're going to be learning this July with about 120 amazing educators and media professionals and librarians who are going to join us in Providence at the Summer Institute in Digital Literacy. And we are so honored and delighted that you're going to be joining us for the co-learning experience. I'll be looking forward to seeing you in July. Thanks for spending a little bit of time with me. I'm Renee Hobbs, Harrington School of Communication and Media at the University of Rhode Island. If you want to learn more about the Summer Institute in Digital Literacy, you can go to mediaeducationlab.com/Summer Institute Digital Literacy. Thanks for joining us today. And Howard, it was a pleasure talking to you. We'll see you this July. Bye.
Bye.